The evening it began. The horizon burned with streaks of orange and red as the sun dipped behind the hills of my ranch. I had just finished checking the fences when the grinding sound of multiple vehicles echoed down the dirt road. At first, I thought maybe hunters had lost their way, but then I saw the convoy, 3 black SUVs with HOA security stenciled crudely on the sides, headlights glaring like search beams. And at the front, climbing out with the self-importance of a dictator, was Karen, the HOA president whose arrogance weighed heavier than her body. She slammed her door, smoothed her blouse, and announced loud enough for the cattle to hear, "This ranch is now under HOA jurisdiction. Step aside or face enforcement." I stood frozen for a beat, gripping the gate with both hands, my chest hammering. "Jurisdiction?" I spat back. "This is private land. My family's deed goes back 5 generations. You and your fake badges don't belong here." Karen's smirk widened, her fleshy fingers stabbing the air toward me. "You think you're special because you have some old papers? This land is within the new HOA boundary, effective immediately. And as president, I've authorized security to take control." Behind her, half a dozen men in mismatched uniforms spilled out, armed with batons, flashlights, and even a few stun guns, their boots crunching against gravel as if they were an army. My neighbors had warned me that Karen was drunk on power, but this was beyond absurd. It was trespass, intimidation, and a performance stage for fear. My pregnant mare whinnied nervously in the corral, sensing the tension. My fists clenched. "Turn around," I warned, my voice steady but sharp, "because if you cross this line, you're not coming back the same way." Karen threw her head back in a laugh, her belly shaking, her arrogance thick enough to choke on. "Arrest him," she barked to her security. "Make him crawl if you have to. This ranch is mine now." They advanced, their boots pounding like drums of war. My blood ran hot, but fear didn't win that night. Resolve did. I turned toward the barn, where I had prepared for exactly this kind of madness. My grandfather always said, "When they come to steal your home, you show them it bites." I pulled the chain that released the floodlights, blinding the advancing men, and the ranch lit up like a stadium. Karen's men stumbled, shielding their eyes, and that's when I set off the second surprise. Dozens of irrigation hoses rigged to high-pressure pumps. Jets of water blasted out like cannons, knocking 2 of them flat onto the dirt. The others slipped, cursed, tried to regain their footing, but the mud thickened beneath them with every second. The cattle bawled, the horses kicked against the rails, and the so-called enforcers looked less like conquerors and more like clowns drowning in muck. Karen screeched from behind them, her voice breaking. "Get up, get him, don't let him win." But her army was faltering. And then, from the shadows, came an unexpected ally. It was Sheriff Dalton, the county lawman who'd grown up with me. He'd been monitoring Karen's antics for months, and that night he chose to arrive without sirens, just in time to witness her false invasion. He stepped into the floodlight, badge gleaming, shotgun slung across his chest. "That's enough," he boomed, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Drop those weapons and get on the ground. You're trespassing on private land and impersonating law enforcement." Karen's face drained of color, her mouth flapping like a fish. "No, you don't understand. This is HOA jurisdiction. We were enforcing rules," but Dalton shut her down with a look so cold the night itself seemed to shiver. "You called a paramilitary raid on a ranch family over imaginary rules. You endangered livestock, property, and lives. That's not enforcement, that's a crime." The security dropped their gear one by one, crawling out of the mud, their uniforms stained, their dignity in tatters. Neighbors who had gathered along the road began clapping, cheering, some filming on their phones, their laughter slicing through the darkness as Karen stumbled, her authority collapsing. Karen's voice cracked into the night as the sheriff's deputies cuffed her so-called enforcers one by one, dragging them out of the mud they had charged into so eagerly. Her face was a mixture of disbelief and rage, her fleshy cheeks blotched red as she screamed, "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I have authority here." But every word only made her sound more desperate, more unhinged. Sheriff Dalton stood tall, his hand resting near his holster, his voice steady enough to slice through her shrieks. "The only authority you have, Karen, is over whether you go quietly or in leg shackles. This land doesn't belong to your HOA, it belongs to the man standing behind that gate. And you're going to answer for what you did tonight. The crowd of neighbors erupted in cheers, some jeering, others clapping, the pent-up frustration of years spilling out at last. Mrs. Lopez, who had been fined hundreds for hanging wind chimes on her porch, shouted, "About time someone shut you up." A rancher down the road bellowed, "She tried this on me last year, claimed my barn needed HOA approval. Lock her up." For once, Karen's booming voice was drowned out by the people she had spent years tormenting. She stumbled back, her shoes sinking in the mud, her empire of fear collapsing in front of her. The trial that followed was a storm of revelations. Prosecutors laid out how Karen had illegally extended HOA boundaries, forged documents, and recruited unlicensed thugs as security. They called it what it was: organized harassment. Witness after witness came forward with stories: phony fines, threats of property seizure, even attempts to shut down small family gatherings under the guise of neighborhood standards. The jury sat stone-faced as recordings of Karen's blustering threats played across the courtroom speakers. One clip captured her bellowing, "I'll make him crawl. No one defies me." The silence that followed in the chamber was heavier than any gavel. Then came the twist. Federal investigators revealed Karen had been working with a shady land developer. Her plan was to force families into foreclosure through relentless harassment, then sell their land to the developer at a fraction of its value. In exchange, she pocketed kickbacks, luxury vacations, wire transfers, and even a brand new SUV. Bank statements and emails laid bare the scheme. The developer tried to slither away, but when Karen was cornered, she threw him under the bus in a desperate attempt to save herself. It backfired spectacularly, cementing her role as the mastermind. Her lawyer, pale and sweating, could barely mount a defense. Karen tried once more to seize control, standing and screaming at the judge, "They're lying. They're all conspiring against me. I was protecting order. You'll regret this when I'm gone." But the judge's gavel silenced her. "Mrs. Whitmore, sit down. You will speak only when spoken to. This courtroom will not tolerate your fantasies of power." She sat, shaking, her hands gripping the table like it might anchor her from the tide of justice washing her away. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on charges of fraud, criminal trespass, conspiracy, harassment, and impersonating law enforcement. The sentence: 8 years in state prison, full restitution of stolen HOA funds, and a lifetime prohibition from serving in any form of governance. The judge's final words echoed like thunder. "You mistook fear for power and lies for law. Tonight, that ends. This community belongs to its people, not to you." Karen's knees buckled, and for the first time, she had no words. When the news broke, the story spread far beyond our county. Media outlets ran headlines like "HOA Tyrant Falls Hard" and "Rancher Defeats Rogue President." Videos of her storming, shrieking, and sinking into mud went viral, turning her into a national cautionary tale. She had wanted fame as a ruler. She got it instead as a fool. But the true victory came at home. The HOA was dissolved, its fraudulent bylaws torn apart. In its place, neighbors formed a cooperative council where decisions were made by open vote. Instead of fines and threats, we built fences together, repaired roads as a team, and hosted gatherings under the stars. The cul-de-sac that once quaked under Karen's roar now rang with music, laughter, and freedom. One evening, months after the trial, Sheriff Dalton came by. We sat on the porch overlooking the wide fields, the sound of cattle lowing in the distance. He took a sip of coffee and said, "She thought storming your ranch would break you. Instead, it broke her. Funny how the truth works that way." I looked across the land my family had fought to keep, the sunset painting it gold, and I knew he was right. At the next community barbecue, neighbors gathered under strings of lanterns, children chasing each other through the grass. My wife leaned against me, smiling, her hand in mine. Daniel strummed a guitar, and people sang along, their voices carrying into the night. As I looked around, I realized Karen had given us something she never intended: unity. Her tyranny had taught us the value of standing together, and her downfall had reminded us that no one person, no matter how loud, can steal a community's spirit. Karen left in shackles, but we stayed, stronger, freer, and finally at peace. And maybe that's the lesson carved into the dirt of my ranch, that fear collapses when people refuse to bow to it. And that truth always finds its way to light, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. So I'll leave you with this. When someone like Karen abuses power and tries to weaponize fear, what's the right thing to do? Stay silent and hope it passes, or fight back, expose the lies, and reclaim what's yours? We fought. We won. What would you do?